So, introducing the speaker. So, our speaker today is Dr. Adebola Giwa, a physician, scientist, and a mentor dedicated to empowering the next generation. Born and raised in Brooklyn, he began his academic journey at the University of Notre Dame. He studied medicine at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. He trained in pediatrics at the University of Chicago and specialized in pediatric endocrinology at Johns Hopkins Children's Center. Today, Dr. Giwa serves as a senior medical director, leading international clinical trials for rare and endocrine diseases. Beyond medicine, he is the founder of Thy Gifted Neighbor, a nonprofit dedicated to mentoring minorities and disadvantaged students in STEM and medicine. With over 15 years of experience in mentoring or mentorship and diversity recruitment, he has guided hundreds of students and professionals into competitive programs. His signature talk, Make Your Next Move Your Best Move, inspires individuals to embrace intentionality, navigate transitions with purpose, and turn uncertainty into opportunity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Adebola Giwa. Everybody, a round of applause for Dr. Adebola.
Welcome, welcome.
All right. You take it away, Dr. Giwa.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out today. I know it's really on a Saturday, so I appreciate you all coming out and hearing this talk. And hopefully you get a lot from it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by taking you back, way back into town. Some of the older people may recognize that reference. So it is April 2005, and I am a Brooklyn boy. I'm a high school senior, and it's time to make a decision for college. This whole month has been pretty anxiety uh, causing. I've spent the last year or so whittling down my list of colleges, and I've narrowed it down to two. One is College A, and the other is College B. College A, I went and I visited, and it was a beautiful campus in the Midwest, which is a brand new place that I've never been before, being from Brooklyn. New people, not many, nobody I know from my school is going there. So it seems like a great place to go, but my financial aid package isn't complete. So from what they've told me so far, I would still have to pay a couple of $1,000s a year to go. Now, option B, the other one on my list, is in the Northeast. So it's in a place I'm familiar with. A bunch of my classmates are going there, and I actually have a full ride. So it's getting down to near the end of April. And for those of you who may know, May 1st is National Decision Day, aka D-Day. That's the day when you have to commit and choose what college you want to go to. So this is a week or so before I have to make this decision. And my mom comes into my room and she says, Adibola, yeah, you need to pick now. Which one? College A or college B? And my mom, kind of wants me to go to college B. It's closer to home and there's a full ride. So I just say, you know what? Let's do college B. I was playing Super Smash Brothers with my brothers, and I didn't want to stop and have to debate my mom and figure out which college I'm supposed to go to. So we decided on college B, and we put in our deposit to go there. And now it's a few days. This is the weekend now before, we've already made our decision, and you can't make any new decisions in a couple of days. But something has been itching at me. I've been thinking and rethinking my decision and the reasons why I chose College B. And some of the things I realized is even though it's familiar and a bunch of my high school friends will go there, and I went to a pretty good high school, one of my friends said, Hey, Adebola, Um, Gone to college B? No, is it college B college or college B university? And then, hey, Dabler, that's a great place to get into, but even I got in there, and it was my friend who didn't necessarily have the best of grades. And then when I would tell people, oh yeah, I got into college A, they'd be like, whoa, college A, whoa, okay, that's nice. And I think only one other person in my school even got in there. And then I was walking back home one day and I noticed there was this car in my neighborhood that had a banner that said College B on it. And I was just like, wow, maybe that's my sign that I should go to College B. But then as I started to walk further, I realized, wait a moment, that car was in my neighborhood and I didn't really grow up in an affluent neighborhood. It wasn't a great looking car. Um, so I realized that there was just something not very well settled with me. And I was just like, I think college A is where I need to go. And this is a scene from the weekend before, just 2 days before all decisions are final. I walked into my parents' room that morning, and I always tell people this is the day that I felt like I became a man, 17-year-old me. And I said, Mom, Dad, good morning. But there's something I have to tell you. Um, don't want to go to college B. I want to go to college A for this, and that reason. And I don't want to go to college B because of this, and that reason. And it was, one of those first times where I had to really stand up to my parents and just kind of say, can't do this. Luckily, to my surprise, they weren't as angry as I thought they would be. And my mom said, well, even though we really want you to go to college B, we do want you to be happy. So we'll put in for college A. We're going to lose our deposit that's non-refundable for college B, but if it'll make you happy, we'll go. And I said, Mom, I understand, and I'll pay you back for that deposit. I'll get a job while I'm in college, and I'll pay you back. And that's how I wound up going to college A. It was a tumultuous time, those last 2 years of high school, trying to make that decision. There's a lots of things to consider. There's lots of colleges, lots of options to go through, everything from the wide range of universities to the cost to the area that your college is going to be in. So the purpose of this talk is to help you navigate that time that was very tumultuous for me. So that's why we're going to talk about how to make your next move your best move. I'm going to tell you about the things to do when you're choosing a college and a major, because these are very important things that will ultimately determine um, and really guide the next many, many years of your life, even after. So in today's talk, we're going to go over a number of things to make you as well informed as possible. We're going to discuss the timeline that you should be going through as a high school student to make sure that you're on the right track and to catch up if you're not. We're going to go into the many factors that you should consider when choosing a college. And one of the things I'll focus on is financial aid and how to uh, make sure that money doesn't play too much of a factor in where you go to. And then we're also going to discuss how to decide on a major and the implications on potential future careers and also salary expectations if you choose that career and what does that mean for your lifestyle as well. So this is a disclaimer that I do with all my mentees and in all my talks. And I always say, you always take people's advice with a grain of salt. And I think whenever you get advice from somebody, you must always evaluate these two things. And you can't have one without the other. You have to make sure the person you're getting advice from has the right expertise to even be giving you advice. And you also have to make sure that that person has the right motive and actually wants the best for you. So you already gave the wonderful introduction, so that was very nice. So you know a lot about me and my expertise, but just at a high level. Uh, Spent the last 20 years or so navigating the U.S. higher education system. I've been doing mentoring basically since college in some shape or fashion. And I've been involved in diversity recruitment. So I've been right there in those back rooms where people would decide who's going to come to what college, what medical school, what residency, and what are the qualities that they're looking for. And of course, I'm just here because I want to help. So much so, I've started my own nonprofit, Thy Gifted Neighbor, which provides mentorship and guidance to people that need it. And I don't know how many of you are students or how many of you are parents, but I just want to give you this disclaimer as well. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Your parents didn't just pay me and say, "You need to tell my child to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer." That's not how the conversation went. The purpose of this talk is to help you make an informed decision. Before you make any big decision in your life, you need to have the important information and know what the implications are. So I'm not here to necessarily push you in one way or another. I'm here to show you what the options are and what the path may look like if you take either of these options. So I just said that I don't really know who everybody here is, but I'm going to try to make this talk as interactive as possible. So I'm going to do a little bit of a roll call. So feel free to use the chat in your on your Zoom app. So I know some of you here may be parents, some of you may be students, but I'm sure all of you are probably in high school or have children in high school. So if you could put in the chat, if you or you are the parent of high school freshman, put one, high school sophomore, put two, high school junior three, and high school senior four. I can have a good idea of who I'm helping and how I can best direct this talk for you guys. Okay, I see the responses coming in. We have a little bit of a mixed bag. Some high school seniors, a couple of freshmen, a few sophomore. That's great. That's great. You're never too early to be informed. Oh, we got somebody who has almost all of them. Okay. So, first question, when do you even start to start preparing for college? This I have, feel free to take a close look if you'd like, the college application timeline, which generally starts junior year. I know we have some freshmen and sophomore here. And as I said, it's never too early to start preparing. And this is a great time to start because you can pre-prepare. So an extra pre in front of that. So the things you can do if you're a high school freshman or sophomore is do your best to get the best grades possible. The better your grades, the more competitive you'll be, and the better colleges you'll be able to enroll in. Additionally, something that's important that not everybody realizes until it's almost a little too late is your curriculars. Most colleges, they want students that are well-rounded. You've been in athletics, if you've had leadership positions, all those things are great because those are some of the qualities and experiences that make a great applicant and a future person who contributes to society. So if you're not already involved in extracurricular activities, start getting involved now. You don't necessarily need to be the club president when you're a freshman, but it's always good to be able to take a look at these applications and see the natural progression of things. Freshman year, maybe you're a regular member. Sophomore, junior year, maybe then you became a coordinator of one of the clubs. And then, junior, senior year, you became one of the leaders, maybe anything from secretary to president. Those are great things to do. So, what I'm going to do now, we're up to junior and senior year. So I'll tell you how it was for me. Junior year is basically when I started to build what I call my box of options. I don't know how often you guys get it now, especially since things have changed a little bit in regards to communication since my time. But I would get all these different letters and pamphlets and brochures and postcards in the mail of different colleges. And when I think they probably started my sophomore year and really started to pile on my junior year. So whenever I would get something from a different college, I would just put it in this shoebox, and it would just build up. So that's what I did starting my junior year. And then in the summer before my well, during the school year, during my junior year, I also took the practice SAT. I actually took a Kaplan course, and then I did some practice tests, and then I eventually took the SAT near the end of my junior year. Um, so what that means for you guys is this is the time that you should start researching your colleges, get a good idea of what your options are. Um, and then during the spring of your junior year, you should start from that big list, start refining your college list, start drafting the essays that you'll need to submit over the summer and during the fall of your senior year. And then also start thinking about who you may want to ask for letter of recommendations and get it from them. Then during the summer of your senior year, generally the Common App, which is the platform that you will apply to colleges, they generally open in the beginning of August. So that's when you can start on your application and put all those things in. So you want to start to finalize your college list in the summer of your senior year and start filling out those college applications and essays. And then in the fall of your senior year, that's when you start submitting your applications. So there's a number of different types of applications you can submit, and we'll go over them in a little bit. Everything ranging from early decision, early action, and regular decision. And depending on which one you pick, those applications are due either um, due in the fall of your junior year versus regular decisions that have a longer timeline and deadlines. And then we'll go over those deadlines in a little bit as well. But high level, the early action and early decision, you'll usually will hear back from them around December, January of your senior year. And then in the spring of your senior year, around March, April, that's when some of the regular decision may start to be released. And as we already talked about, May 1st, D-Day. Decision day is your last day to um, submit your enrollment deposit. That's the deadline day. Okay, so we said we talk about. So there are a couple of different ways that you can apply. There's early decision and action, and there's also regular decision. So what's the difference between these? I'll go over. So we'll start with early decision. The thing with early decision is you apply early. The deadlines is usually around November of your senior year, and then you usually will get your decision between December 1st and December 31st of your senior year. So with this, typically you can only apply to one early decision school. And the reason for that is if you are accepted, students are obligated to attend this institution. So if you really know where you want to go and you just want to knock all the stuff early, all that application anxiety early, this is not a bad option. Some of the benefits of this, you have an increased chance of admission, and the institution has a clear idea of how their students are going to look like. One of the reasons why you have a better chance of admission, and I'll show you the stats a little bit later, is in the eyes of the admissions people, if you're a high school person and you are busy with your high school schoolwork and extracurriculars, if you're able to finish your application early enough to send this in, it's a certain student type that tends to do that. Those people tend to be more competitive, have better grades. It shows that you're responsible and you stay on top of things. So those people, they're more likely to say, hey, this is the kind of person we want at our school. Some of the drawbacks of doing early decisions is you do miss out. schools um, if UT is not successful. So, um, and you're obligated to attend if you are accepted. So if were thinking about other places, you shouldn't experience much. If you have issues with FOMO, this could be an issue for you because you'll get accepted, get in, and then be like, oh, but what if I could have gone to this other place? Um, Early action is the next step up. It is not binding. This is one is due in November-ish as well. Um, you can apply early action to a number of schools. You'll usually get notified if you were accepted somewhere between December and January. For this one, you do not need to you do not need to commit until actually the May 1st deadline, as opposed to um, early action. If you get accepted, that's it, and then you're done in January. Um, the drawbacks is if you are thinking about maybe going here, you apply to also a regular decision, you're gonna have to wait for decision for the other schools to decide um, if you need to choose between the different options. And then the little asterisks I put here, sometimes some places are a bit different with their timelines and their requirements. So be sure to take a look at that and make sure that you are following their guidelines and putting in their requirements. So I said I'd show you the stat of who gets into who gets into college by this way.
Mute yourself. Sorry, I'm Dr. Giwa. Mute yourself, please. Mute yourself.
29 is Eileen. Susan.
So
The other Susan.
this stats over here, some of you may have heard of early action or early
Dr. Hope,
decision.
can you
This
please
stat
mute them?
this stat over here shows you exactly this one shows a couple of colleges and it shows what percentage of their class actually were admitted to this um, early pathway. So as you can see, anywhere between 40 to 60-ish% of the freshman class was accepted through early decision, early action, or some other restrictive early pathway. And here it shows a number of different places, I think 50 to 60 from a lot of top known, well-known schools. And then and I mentioned, how does that affect your matriculation rate? What percentage of people are accepted? So here I have the acceptance rate of different universities. So by people who did early decision, if you apply early decision, your chances of getting in are higher, as you can see, anywhere between um, around 15% all the way up to 60%. While if you do regular decision, your chances are, usually under 10%. And if you think about it statistically, just think of it as a numbers game. One, colleges prefer people to do it early because it just shows that you're a real go-getter. And usually it's the people who are more competitive. And then colleges also like to have an early idea of how their class is going to look like. They do not really want to have empty seats. So if they can get people in there and decide early, they said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So they want to pick from that pool. And there's also a smaller pool. So you have relatively less competitors in this pool, though they may be a little bit more competitive versus the regular decision, which is what everybody does. You much bigger pool of applicants, and this is, these people get the seats that are left over from the early decision pool. So some of the key takeaways with that, during your junior year, be sure to start researching colleges and take the practice test and take the actual test. So you'll have your grades in time to submit to colleges. During your senior year is when you need to start applying to colleges. You can start as early as August 1st. And you need to strategically choose between early decision and early action. The people who should probably pick early decision, um, uh, the benefits are that it gives you an increased chance of admission, but do remember that it is a binding commitment. And for early action, this also increases your admission chance, but this is not binding. So this seems like a nice intermediate place. So if you can do that one, that's definitely a great option. Some other things you'll need to consider is if you do early decision that is a binding contract, can your family afford the estimated cost of attendance without comparing the other financial aid packages? Because you won't always have that available when you make your decision. Um, then also, are you comfortable with the possibility of no longer having options to attend other colleges if you're accepted early decision? And then also a little hack that not many people know, and hopefully it won't be too much of an issue for you, is while going early decision is a binding commitment, the only real way to get out of it is actually if you turns out that you cannot afford to go there. You can't just change your mind and say you don't want to go. That's not really allowed. And it doesn't look good because colleges may like blacklist you. Like this person pulls out of their contracts. So if you can't afford it or you have some big sort of family issue, maybe the student can't go anymore because they have to live locally because there was some big illness in the family. Those are the two big groups of people that can pull out of this binding commitment. But hopefully that won't be an issue for you. So the next question is, where do you even start your search? There's so many colleges out there. Um, how many actually? There's almost 10,000 institutions to choose from. For colleges and universities, there's around 3,700 total. I have the breakdown over here. So that's like around 2,600 four-year institutions that you get your bachelor's degree from. And there's around 1,100 two-year institutions that are your community colleges where you get your associate's degree from. If you also factor in trade school, there's around 6,000 different trade and vocational schools. For those who aren't very familiar with trade schools, these are places where you can get, and we'll go into more depth a little bit later, technical institutes, vocational training centers, career colleges, apprenticeships. It's those kinds of places. They're usually shorter in time, but we'll go into a deep dive in just a little bit. But, for right now, I mentioned that there's around 3,700 colleges and universities. Two ways you can kind of separate it because you may hear, oh, is it a public college or university or is it a private? Those are the two big buckets you can kind of put them in. What are some of the big differences between this? One is the cost, is where what the funding source is. If it's a public college or university, many of these places, because it's public, they're funded by the state or local government. Um, the tuition is usually lower for in-state graduates because those are the people that pay the taxes that they get their money from. And they'll usually will even have a higher tuition for people who are out of state. Because they are a public institution, they're usually larger, so bigger campus body. And, because it's the state paying for it, the school will usually have the state in the name, i.e., University of Texas or California or Ohio State. And programs that they're offered are pretty variable for anybody that may be coming in from their state. And the financial aid is usually less institutional aid and more government aid. While private colleges and universities are funded mostly by tuitions and donations and endowments. Because this is their source as opposed to the government, their tuition tends to be a bit higher, um, also smaller as well, because they're not funded by, because they are not funded by locality. They have their own names. Those are your Harvards, your Duke, your Amherst, etc. And they usually tend to have a little bit more specialized or maybe liberal arts focus. So some schools they're like, oh, a small liberal arts school. Those are usually the private ones. And most of the financial aid, they do have federal and government aid as an option for finance, but you're more likely to fund your education there, not from tuition, from institutional scholarships and grants. So you have so many options to choose from. I mentioned my box of colleges, and then I would go to my guidance counselor's office, and then there'd also be a bunch of colleges there to choose from. So with from all these colleges, how do you now narrow your search? Um, there are a number of different platforms you can go on, and here are a couple over here that you can go and just look up the different colleges and screen them and find different demographics and information about them so you can best make your decision. And I'll go into the things that you should consider as you're making this decision. But over here, we have Big Future by College Board, which lets you search colleges and compare them and see what majors they have. Um, College Navigator is more for the government run, super detailed information about the costs and graduation rates, especially if you love those data. Um, if you want to know a bunch about the rankings and you want to see the student reviews and such, so basically your Yelp for colleges, you can go to Niche, this college scorecard,
So,
there's CapEx. Again, Unigo lets you see the student reviews, lets you see the scholarships. And there's one on the Common App, which lets you also see quick summaries of them. So you go on this platform and you want to search colleges, and now you see the information. So what things should you even be looking at to help you narrow down your choice? So one of the important things and an easy way to kind of um, narrow the search is first start by location. We've got 10,000 universities all over the country. So first think about where in the country do you even want to live? So do you want to be close to home, or do you want to go someplace completely new? For some people, homesickness is an issue and they want to have a nice support system. Some people want to go far away. With me, there was five of us. I have two brothers and my parents, and all in a two-bedroom apartment, and all in each other's faces for 17 years. So I was like, let me see something new. So I mostly applied in areas away from the Mid-Atlantic, funny enough. Next is the setting that you want to go to. You want it to be more urban if you're a city person, or do you want it to be more rural or suburban? Um, What kind of weather do you want? How's the safety in and around the campus? What sort of recreational environment is there? Transportation options. I mean, coming from New York myself, most people don't have their driver's license into their 30s and 40s, if you can believe that. So if you may want to go to a place where I like to go and explore, but I don't want to drive. So you may want to go to a place that has more public transportation. And then are there internship and employment opportunities nearby? Another big thing that you want to know is what will the school do for your career? You know, during your junior year, you should have a pretty good idea of what you want to be when you grow up, or at least a little bit of that direction. So if you want to be a doctor, you should probably aim to go to schools that have some sort of pre-med track or a strong science major. The strength and reputation of the school, but also specifically the department. If you go to a school, for example, that maybe has a great reputation in pre-law, but you want to become a doctor, that may not necessarily help you as you go on the interview trail for medical school. What's the class size? What's the student to faculty ratio? If you want to go to a place that maybe isn't as big because you really benefit from having those one-on-one interactions with your teacher. Opportunities for research, academic support. Everybody needs different levels of support. Do they offer tutoring? Do they offer advisement? Um, honors program or special academic tracks. Talked about pre-med, those sorts of things. Accreditation and academic outcomes. Some universities also have grad schools. If that grad school is in the major or career that you want to go to, that could be a special boost for you because after you finish undergrad, you'll have a relatively higher chance of getting into the grad school if you were an undergrad there. And then opportunities outside of your everyday class. Some places have internships associated with their school and co-op opportunities, specifically if you're interested in engineering, career services and advising, an alumni network. These are important because I think about my path as well. I knew I wanted to be a doctor since the seventh grade, so I knew I wanted to be pre-med. So going to a university that had pre-med, had a good reputation for their pre-med department and advising, so was very, I think, helpful for me in regards to being competitive because they really stayed on top of us in regards to making sure we were following along the timeline when we should be. So they were like, are your grades where you need to be? If you want to apply to medical school, you should do this and that activities. Like we had regular meetings every couple of months to make sure we were going all along the right track and getting all of our papers and applications in on time. Well, I know some of my other friends who did not have that much support, they struggled more as they were applying to medical school because nobody told them, oh, was there a deadline that was coming up? Or, oh, should I have been doing that already? While in my school, it was almost a homework assignment to make sure that all of our stuff was in on time. So there was no questions about what the deadlines were. Um, a lot of places, schools, they like to boast what their graduate school acceptance rates are and what their job placement rates are. So taking a look at that for your specific career that you're interested in, and then also helping you even get these opportunities, resume building, interview prep. Um, some places they'll have career fairs where industry people will come and say, "Hey, you want a job over the summer?" kind of thing. Um, and with that as well, the alumni network is something to look at and not necessarily sleep on. I think a lot of people tend to maybe overlook it, but I remember from my university, after I left, the one thing with the university is, you know, the industry partnerships, they would have career fairs and it would be really easy for me or my colleagues to get summer jobs and after college opportunities because people would come to our school because they know the quality of our students and they would actively recruit us as opposed to, having to do cold calls, cold applications, go on LinkedIn, apply for different internship spots, and you're not sure if you're going to get in or not. But because of your school's name, it puts a big helps to open the door much further open, as well as the alumni network. Even still to this day, when I go, people say, "Oh, where'd you go to college?" And I tell them, they're like, "Oh, wow, that's great." And because people know the quality of the students there. And then also, you sometimes there's been times when I would apply for a position and somebody either knows somebody from your institution or they went there themselves. Definitely a big door open. So, especially if alumni love their college, they'll definitely go back and support them. Something that's really important. How happy will you be there? So take a look at the campus diversity, inclusivity, the size of the student body. What's the campus culture? You can get an idea of that by maybe visiting or taking a look at the reviews. People tend to be really competitive versus collaborative. Clubs, organizations, extracurriculars. I know when I was looking around, when I was trying to decide between college A and college B, I was like, oh, cool, college B, I can learn how to speak Japanese and join the swim team. Or over here, oh, look, they have Quidditch and things like that. Housing and residential life options. Do you want to live on campus versus is it more urban and there's not as many residential options, or maybe you want to live in the city? religious and spiritual community, support for first generations and underrepresented students. And a good way to get an idea is college visits. I mentioned, did I mention that? No, no, I didn't mention it. Yes, in the summer before my senior year of high school, I did this special program at my university I actually wound up going to. This was for college A, and I spent a week there, and it was called the African American Catholic Leadership Development Seminar. And they took 40 kids from around the country, and we just got to spend a week on campus and do college level seminars. So it was a great way to see exactly how the culture is. And being a New Yorker, I've never experienced the Midwest before, and all the things that they say about, oh, people nicer in the Midwest. It was a little bit of a culture shock to me, to see how many nice people there were, which is I found to be really attractive. Next, what will it cost you? Um, you need to consider where tuition and fees fit in. What is the cost of living in the area? Financial aid and scholarships available. Um, Student loan burden. Can you maybe do a work study or a part-time job? And then also be sure to look at the hidden costs. Besides the tuition for attending the school, a lot of times schools will also post, oh, this is what housing costs, this is what meals cost in a different plan, transportation, books, those kind of thing. And then very importantly, the long-term return on investment of that degree. Um, and that's the way you can think about college, really. College is an investment. It's not just a cost. And you have to be able to take that cost and balance it. Because if a school is very expensive, it may not necessarily mean it's worth it. But a good signs that the college is worth a potentially higher cost is the name recognition. You know, because if you like, oh, you went here and there. Oh, it could open doors and relevant careers and things. Does it prepare you well for future in a competitive field? Um, are you getting a major going into a major career that's high paying that'll help offset the cost later on? And do you have supplemental funds to pay for education? And just an example of that, it was mentioned in my bio that I went to Hopkins for my endocrinology training, and I'm still a physician there. And you know, even though Hopkins may be more expensive, that name definitely opens doors because when I'm applying at jobs or looking for at different opportunities, once they see that Hopkins name or College A, which I'll tell you in a little bit what college it was, um, it's less of me trying to impress them and them trying to impress me. So on the different end of the spectrum of how you can kind of imagine it, you know, you have to think, is the juice worth the squeeze? Do you necessarily, just as an example, want to go to a small liberal arts college if you plan to be in a low paying major, relatively low paying career, where maybe where you went to college isn't as important? Or versus on the other side of the spectrum, is that money worth it? Yeah, you're gonna go to, just to use an example, oh, you went to Harvard, wow, and you went into medicine or law. It'd be worth the money because especially if you're going into medicine or law, whatever money that you paid in tuition, you'll get back in your career in a couple of years down the line, and then uh, it'll all even out. You're talking about different colleges. I also wanted to throw trade school into the mix as well. So some people may or may not be familiar with trade school, but they are they include fields such as healthcare, skilled trades, technology, business, and cosmetology. Um, I have here outlined some of the big differences between trade schools and longer colleges and universities. But generally speaking, trade schools, they usually are around 6 months to 2 years. You get a certificate or a diploma, but not necessarily a degree. They really focus on hands-on job-specific schools. Usually there's a direct to work and skilled trade, so you work a bunch and maybe plumbing, and then right that right there you can go get a job and and plumbing right from there. The costs generally are much lower than colleges, and they usually have open enrollment, so not as selective in the enrollment process, which can be nice. And I have some examples of some of the careers here as well as there, versus the other categories, which are usually around 2 years. You get an associate or bachelor's degree, um, academic vocational mix, and the competitiveness level is also generally higher as well. So, you're trying to maybe choose, should I go to trade school? Should I not? So I just over here outlined some of the pros and cons to consider depending on what your needs are. If you really hate school and can't be in it for too much longer, maybe a shorter program is better for you. If money is a really big factor, schools cost lower. They give you job-ready schools, uh, job-ready skills. Um, so depending on what you want to go into, that's something to take into account because if you're not sure you maybe want to go and be an electrician, um, that it may not be the best idea to go into trade school because you have a less traditional college experience and you don't really have a lot of opportunities to get skills in other places. Some employers, depending on what you want to go into, they may prefer degrees or higher level roles. So that's something to think about. Um, there is a faster path to earning money. After 6 months to 2 years, you could be get a job right in. You can get a job right in that area quickly with a less student loan debt burden. Um, but also you have to make sure you pick the right one because some trade schools do have high earning, do lead to high earning careers, while some others do not. So it could be a faster path to money, but you may be capped at a lower rate, lower amount. Uh, and then also the classes generally are smaller. So if you like that personalized instruction, that could be good. But the other thing to also consider, some programs may not be eligible for federal aid. So while it may be cheaper, um, you may have to pay for more of it out of pocket. And speaking of paying for your higher education out of pocket, what are your options for cost mitigation? There are a number of different categories of supplements to the tuition you pay out of pocket. One of them is merit scholarships, which are based on your grades and your test scores and your talent. Usually for these, you apply directly with your college, or there's other private organizations, and I'll show you in a little bit how you can search for them. Your NAACPs, your Gates scholarships, you apply directly with them. There's also need-based scholarships. Many of these require your FAFSA as proof of what your financial status actually is. And then there's also local opportunities as well. Community foundations, your high school counselor may have a list outside their office, local businesses and churches. And a little pro tip for you guys, sometimes when people are looking through different scholarship options, they think, oh, well, this scholarship is only a few $1,000s and it's not much in the big bucket of what the tuition actually costs. But it could be beneficial because honestly, every little bit counts. And you can get many small scholarships that can actually add up to a nice big scholarship. So how do you even go about looking for scholarships? Here are a bunch of sources. So if you want, you can screenshot them. I'm not going to read through all of them. But one of the pro tips that I'll give you as you're reading through these is apply early and complete the application. You may think, oh, that goes without saying, but you have to also think about what is the mindset of the people who get these scholarships. It's actually similar to people who are early action, early decision. These people have a different kind of mindset, the people that actually get the scholarships. All to say that it requires a certain amount of initiative that not everybody has, and especially everybody's of course different, but especially high school kids sometimes are not as motivated as their parents may want them to be. So the people that actually go the extra route to even look for scholarships, that decreases the size of the pot of competitors. And then for those that then find the scholarships, those that actually complete it is even smaller because sometimes kids may start, but then if you don't remind them, they don't finish it, they don't submit it. And if they do, it's not complete. They didn't go through the extra work of getting this form or getting that letter of recommendation. So then the pot's even smaller. Then next, apply early. Even for me, who's a pretty good big go-getter, I completed my applications, but most of them are right at the deadline. So apply a little bit early, uh, so you be more competitive to get it. Because I'll just say, for me, for example, I got the Gates Millennium Scholarship, um, which basically is a scholarship by Bill Gates for people going into STEM, and it supplements their college tuition. So whatever financial aid you get, if you get the Gates Millennium Scholarship, instead of paying anything out of pocket, Bill Gates will pay the rest of it. And I applied for that. Um, it's like, oh, I'm never gonna get this thing. But if you think about it, or if you think about how many people actually qualify, then go through the steps, then actually complete it, bada bing, bada boom, I got a Gates Millennium Scholarship. Um, so look and apply. And here I won't go through all these in depth, but here's a bunch of different search engines that you can for scholarships that you can search and filter through for what you think your child may qualify for. Also look for local and school specific scholarships over there. You can contact the college's financial aid office and ask them what they may have available. And if you especially come from a special interest group by ethnicity, race, anything, look into that also because that's a good way for you to get those niche scholarships. Another thing you can do is follow me on Instagram. I post about different opportunities that I see available. So that's it right there is the QR code. Also throw that in the chat. That's my digital business card, so you can follow me on any social media platform, but especially Instagram. I post a bunch of scholarship opportunities. And then over here in my highlights of I have, in the past, all the ones related to high school scholarships I have here. And this one's more for college people going into medicine and all that stuff. But particularly my Instagram, this high school one, you can take a look for opportunities that are more specific for a high school student applying to college, including scholarships. Next thing, FAFSA, another big thing you should all be aware of. And, even though I have kids and they're young, but I also have lots of family going through this and a lot of them slapping their heads thinking, oh man, I didn't get a great package. I don't think I filled that out right. I have aunties and nieces and nephews that go through that. So knowing the FAFSA and knowing how to be strategic can really be a game changer. So, what is FAFSA? Why does it matter? It's the free application for federal student aid. And this allows you to get federal grants, which you don't have to pay back, federal loans, which are better than private loans because they have much better interest rates and terms uh, compared to other ones. It allows you to get work study jobs. Um, and many state colleges and private scholarships require you to do FAFSA so they can use that information and verify your financial status too, so that these places can also give you financial aid. So some of the key facts to keep under your belt. It opens October 1st every year. Um, and the priority deadlines vary by state in college. You want to make sure you fill this out as early as possible because this is a rolling kind of thing. So earlier you fill it out, the more likely you are to actually get aid. Um, so definitely hop on that as soon as you can. Beat the rush while supplies last. It's free to fill out FAFSA, so if you Google it, be careful because you may get some things that said like, "Hey, we'll help you fill out FAFSA and charge you a fee." So you should be careful if you're thinking about paying somebody to fill out the form for you. Both the student and parent information is needed, and those things include both your taxable and untaxable income and assets, but does not generally include your debt. And we'll go into a little bit more of what's needed in just a bit. Um, so both the student and the parent actually need a FSA, FAFSA ID. So both of the parents will just have one together, and then the student will have one. If the parents are not married or never been married or one is not around, then only one parent needs to actually put in their information, the custodial parent. So that means the parent that either the kid spends the most amount of time with. If it's evenly split, then it's the parent that pays most of the financial fees for the child that then needs to put in their FAFSA information. If that custodial parent has remarried and now that child has a step parent, then the custodial parent and the step parent put that information in, and that's counted and taken into account. So, what information do you actually need to put in there? You're like my student. What left of my child need to put in there? So you got to put in your social security, driver's license if you have it, federal tax returns and W-2s, if that's available, records of untaxed income. So it's like child support, interest income if they have some investments in the stock market, bank statements, savings, investments, those kinds of things. Um, and for the parents, similar things, Social Security, your federal tax returns. Usually it'll be the last 2 years, your tax returns that they'll ask for. Records of untaxed income, how much is in your bank account and savings and investment. Um, if you have a business, farm records if applicable. So those are the things that they'll ask for. So what counts, what doesn't count, what weighs more? This is where the strategy is starting to come in. So what FAFSA looks at is they look at your income and assets for both parents and the students. What are the assets, the cash, savings? We kind of went over that. 529 plans, they take that into account. And other. So the things that they don't consider are your credit card balances, your car loans, personal loans, medical debt. If you have a mortgage on your home, they don't consider that. Other loans that may be taken out for education. So it's not strategic to necessarily build up your debt and think, hey, if I look poorer from this standpoint, I'm going to get more financial aid. So that's not a strategic move because they mostly just look at your income and assets. Um, so with that being said, if they're looking at how much money's in your bank account, one strategic thing you can do actually is try and pay down your debt before filing for FAFSA. And this is all self-reported. So a lot of this is honor system. So how much is in your bank account? They're not, you don't actually have to upload your bank statement. So they'll just have you um, just self-report it. And what they do is occasionally they'll just same thing as the IRS. They may just pick random people uh to verify. So that may not happen. It's only a small percentage that happens to, and then they may call you up and say, "Hey, can you send in your most recent bank statements?" Sometimes there may be a little bit of a red flag. It's just like your last uh tax returns show that you make a lot of money, but there's zero in your bank account. Can you just confirm that? So then that may or may not happen. Um, and then loans you can get after filing for FAFSA, federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, the student can get, and then the plus loans for the parents. I'm not like, okay. Some other things to also be aware of. They'll also ask you to list up to 20 colleges and universities that you actually want to send the FAFSA to. If you're applying to more than 20 schools, what you need to do is just go ahead and submit your FAFSA to the first 20 and then wait and see that the schools confirm that they've received it. You can actually look in the portal to see who has received it and who hasn't. And then once you see that they have received it, you log into FAFSA, remove some of those schools, and you add the additional schools. The new schools will get it, and they don't delete the data from the past schools. Uh, it seems like a little bit of an unnecessary process, but hey, that's the world sometimes. Important things to realize is you need to renew the FAFSA every year. Um, so hypothetically, if you are a high school senior, you fill out FAFSA, you get a financial aid package your freshman year. They realize people's financial aid statuses change every year. So if you do not renew during your freshman year, refill in with your current financial status is, you won't be eligible to get those same grants and scholarships and loans you had during your freshman year. So all that could potentially go away. So you need to be sure that you reapply every year. And some colleges too and states require you to renew it to keep their aid as well. So this is a nice, interesting slide, strategies to maximize your FAFSA benefits. I told you a bunch of things, and maybe in your head you're like, but what about this, this, and that? So let me just help flush some of the high level strategies for you. As I mentioned, file early. It's first come, first serve. So make sure you try and hit that low hanging fruit. Um, on the website, you can use the IRS data retrieval tool. So it just pulls in your old tax returns, and that's better than self-reporting because if there's discrepancies or errors, that can cause processing delays. And they, hey, you didn't fill this right, do this, fix it, and then resubmit it. So, you don't want any delays. So it's a lot easier than having to do your old TurboTax things. You want to keep assets student friendly. So, I mentioned that they look at W-2s and 529s and bank statements. So student savings are counted more heavily against aid than parent savings. So when possible, try and keep the money in the parents' accounts rather than the student's name. So if your kid has a bank account, you know, not that I'm telling you what to do or anything, but especially in the in the months leading up to FAFSA, you may want to move some of that money into your account because if they have special formulas that they use to determine age. So if this kid's rolling in the dough, he's more likely to get less aid than if the parents are rolling in the dough per se. And then now you have a bunch of money in your account. You're like, oh no, what do I do? Hey, if you have some credit card debts that you've been piling up, this is a good time to pay them off, increase your credit score. But one way to make that bank account statement a little bit lower is go ahead and pay off those debts. Um, certain sets. So focus on keeping funds in the non-reportable um, categories if possible. We already talked about listing for school, reapplying every year, and if you need help, if you think that there's been a big financial change, job loss, those kind of things, you can appeal to the financial aid office, especially if you're looking at if your package change, if your financial situation changed after you submitted. And one of the things I also want to say about the student friendliness too is, I mentioned 529 plans. I think that those are great. Um, for those of you who don't know about 529 plans, it's basically uh, tax exempt um, little brokerage-ish account for your kids. So I'll just use an example for my kids. They're toddlers now, so I have a 529 plan. So I take my after-tax money and I put it in this account, and then it grows. You choose what you want to invest it in, and then it grows tax-free until they go to college. Um, and then once they're in college, every 529 plan is a little bit different. Sometimes they let you use that money for either secondary education, so high school and elementary school, but ideally it's for college. Um, your students then can withdraw that money and use it for their only for educational related expenses. And that's a good thing because generally, if you put money and invest it, you have to pay tax on your gains. By doing this, you are not taxed on your gains. So your gains are untaxed. That's now just used for college. So generally, the account is under my name as the parent, but the beneficiary is my child. So that's a good way to help save for money, and it's better to keep the account in my name as a parent as opposed to my child. Because if it's like, oh, your kid has $20,000, it's not going to be as good as if, oh, it's just me. I have this account set aside for my child. Then it also comes a question, well, you can actually have the account holder be a grandparent or a family member, aunt, uncle, those kinds of things. So that's a little bit of a loophole-ish because if there's a 529 plan in somebody else's name, that's not the parent or student, that is not taken into account when they take the financial aid. But there is a caveat. So I'll say, for example, if I if I make a 529 account for my niece, my brother's daughter, you know, they do not put the money that's in that account into her FAFSA. It's not taken into account. However, if she starts to withdraw money from that account the following year, the money she got from me as her uncle from that 529 plan will be counted as income. And then that's going to be on the student side. So then there's kind of that that trade-off. So then it's going to affect her next year's financial aid package. If, oh, Rich, she just got $10,000 in cash last year. That's going to affect her. So one strategy for that is if you can, the two recommendations to try to avoid that. One of them is right before she goes to college, I switched the 529 account from my name as her uncle to my brother's name, which is then her parent, or I can save the 529 plan and give it to her during her senior year of college. Then it doesn't really matter because if she used all the money in the 529 during her senior year of college, and now, whoa, she got $20,000 worth of income. But that doesn't really matter because she's not going to need financial aid next year because she won't be in college anymore. She would have finished. So those are some nuanced hacks. So takeaway and considerations, use these search engines to find scholarships. You also can get information from guidance counselors, word of mouth. If you have a long list of colleges, these are the places you can figure out what colleges are, and then you can refine your list by thinking about the location, what's the campus environment like, what's it going to do for your career, how happy you'll be there, and what will it cost you. but try not to let the cost. One way to mitigate the impact and consideration of costs is try to be strategic, apply to lots of scholarship, apply early, and fill out your FAFSA early. And then a little hack too when it comes to making your decision about which college to even pick from. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people are really about the data, so they it's they want to have a spreadsheet and they'll have a whole bunch of considerations rated on a scale of 1 to 10, and then whoever has the highest score, well, that's the best option to go to. Something that I found worked for me because I've gone to many different institutions, i.e., medical school, residency, fellowship, is I did what I call the envelope open test. So this takes the numbers out of it a lot, and it really just goes by gut. And your first initial gut feeling, if you really want to figure out what that is, this is how you do it. Pretend somebody gives you an envelope and you open the envelope and it'll have the name of the college or university that you're applying to. Whatever name is in there is where you have to go. Those first 5, 10 seconds when you see the name, how do you feel? Are you happy? Are you elated? Or are you slightly disappointed? That's a good way to really figure out how you feel about the place when you don't have too many other thoughts and numbers in your head. Okay. And then just something really quick, because I know we have freshmen and sophomore and juniors who don't know what's in the Common App, which is the platform that you use to apply for colleges. I won't read through all of these, but this is just to give you an idea of what you should be preparing for to have available during August before your senior year. So profile section, your basic info, who's in your family, education, what courses are you taking in past courses? These are self-reported. Counselor info, so they can contact your guidance counselor so they can get an idea of the context of all your classes and such. So it's important to put that information there. They'll also use that to verify what grades you put in when you send in your actual transcript and such. And then, the council will also be like, well, they didn't put down a lot of AP classes because we don't actually offer many AP classes. So it's that kind of information that they put there. Um, your standardized tests. Many schools nowadays are also actually test optional. They realize, studies have shown that sometimes these standardized tests aren't a good assessment of somebody's actual level of intelligence. And some people just may be really smart, but not great test takers. So some schools are like, hey, SAT, ACT optional. So that's something to be aware of. The activity section, you can include up to 10 extracurriculars and describe your role there. This is probably a bigger part that you can start thinking about ahead of time. The writing section, you'll choose from 7 different prompts and you'll write a personal essay, 650 words. Um, and that's kind of like your personal statement. And then as you include what colleges you want to send your application to, there'll be additional essays that may populate because some schools may require more essays. Some may actually explain circumstances, challenges, those kinds of context, or why do you want to come to our school? Um, Otherwise, there's your transcript. I already mentioned some of the college specific questions. Your letters of recommendation. So be nice to your teachers, especially during your junior year, because you may have they may have to write you a letter of recommendation if your teachers don't like you. That may be an issue for your competitiveness. So your junior year, so especially those who aren't seniors, make sure you're nice to your teachers. And here's an example of some of the prompts you'll get. They may be describe your background, identity, something that's meaningful that your application would not be complete if you didn't mention it. Put that in there. Um, Describe some obstacles. Have you ever questioned or challenged a belief or idea? Um, Reflect on something that someone has done that made you happy or thankful. Discuss an accomplishment. Grab a topic or idea you find so engaging that it just absolutely captivates you. And then, kind of freestyle. So these prompts may change a bit each year. So it's good to start drafting these, but they don't change that much. But it's a good idea to have take a look at potential prompts. These were the ones you used last year, and then come up with a good draft of it during the end of your senior year and over the summer. And then August rolls around, take a look at what the essays are, and hopefully you won't have to modify it too much. But that's one way to be as strategic as possible because I know, especially talking to some of my family members who just got into college, their friends who are less competitive because they've put in their application late, it was because the essay part, because this will be the most time consuming part. The other ones is just plug and chug, but this is the most time consuming part. So if you want to be strategic, start early, these prompts. So, we talked a little bit about, not a little bit, we talked a lot about where you can potentially go for college and such. So I told you I was going to let you guys know where I ultimately chose, and I chose College A, and that was the University of Notre Dame. And I was very happy with my decision. I tell people that the day I walked in, I took during freshman orientation, they took a picture of me on my ID, and there was a big, easy smile on my face. And that smile didn't leave my face until I graduated. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my college experience and, all the things that I took into consideration and whether or not it panned out. So, growing up in New York, I'm used to that concrete jungle. So I really wanted to go to a place that had those images I saw in my box of choices, that pristine campus with the grass and the trees. Um, and I could sit under the trees and people would play hacky sack. I wanted to have that classic college experience. So that's what I definitely did. And Notre Dame is ranked as one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. I got from a cultural standpoint, I got a wide range of diversity, which I thought was actually surprising because when I was like, I'm going to go to a place called the Fighting Irish, not even Irish. I'm Nigerian. Why can't it be? Why can't it be that? But um, there were a lot of diverse opportunities there, especially if you open your eyes. So I eventually became the president of the African Student Association. Here's a picture of me and my abada hosting an event. I also got to experience other people's cultures. Here's me at a luau. Here's me at a Filipino event. Here's me at another Asian event. I was also a Spanish major, so I hung out with a lot of international kids. I also did African American events. So this is actually me at the first inauguration of Barack Obama. We took a trip there. And here's us in front of, you're in the DMV, so you already know what that is. There were great opportunities for my career. I'm now a Hopkins trained physician, and I actually got voted part of the Domer Dozen, so one of the most accomplished people during of the young alumni. So I came back and did a presentation about that. While I was at Notre Dame, um, I did research. I looked at uh, colon cancer. I did lots of service work. Here's me. I spent the summer in Pahokee, Florida. I had an off-campus job mentoring kids. Here's me doing an on-campus event with some underprivileged kids. I joined a dance group, so that's me in the middle, holding a breakdance freeze over there. I played Quidditch, which is a sport from the book Harry Potter. And I did lots of physical stuff. So I took up boxing there. So here's actually me on ESPN. They're doing a piece about our boxing tournament, and there's me in the gym working out. So that's my little claim to fame. Definitely love campus life. If you know Notre Dame, you know Notre Dame football. So here's me. I got to go on the field one time. Here's me at a football game. Everybody goes to that. Um, my dance group, we performed at a pep rally in front of the whole school. So here's me doing some work in front of everybody. St. Patrick's Day was also fun. There's different on-campus events. This is Halloween. I dressed up as a Ghostbuster. I was visiting my friend. Um, and here I rode around campus on a scooter, and here it says Ghost Busted as the license plate. My homemade uh, campus, my homemade costume. So that was my campus life. And now we're gonna get to, now that you've chosen a college, the other important thing to do is to choose a major. And I mentioned before, hopefully you know where you want to what you want to be when you grow up, when you're a junior or so. But a lot of times, if you ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? They say, no. A lot of high school kids that I mentor and their parents are just like, I've been asking him, I've been asking her, what do you want to do? And there's just dot, dot, dot. So one good thing to think about is when thinking about what you want to be when you grow up, is this Japanese term ikagai. And it's your reason for being. So there's a number of different things to consider when you're thinking about what you want to do when you grow up. So here on the outer ones, there's things that you're good at, things you love to do, thing that the world needs, and what can you be paid for. So, we have a Venn diagram here. So some things, like things that you're good at and things that you love, or what we describe as our passion. But if it's not what the world needs and you can't be paid for, then this will be, something that's unique and may make you happy, but you may not be paid very much for it. Versus on the other side, something that the world needs and something that you can get paid for, or that you're calling. But you may be very talented at something, but you may not be super. But if you can get a mixture of all the things you love, things you're good at, things the world needs, things you get paid for, you have a guy. And what that's a good way to know what you should do when you grow up. And I use that, finding that ikigai. So once you have an idea of what that is, you want to pick a place that can help grow your ikigai. And I kind of think of college as an investment, and a lot of this, an investment that needs to grow. And you can think of the seed plants as that's your major, you know, and the result of you following that career and that major, you could think of it as the fruit of your seed. So some of them produce fruit fast, you do this major and right out of college, you're making lots of money. While some of them produce fruit slow, maybe you the major and then you may have to do graduate school. And then after some time, then you start making the money. Some produce little fruit, some produce plenty. Some may lead to high income careers, while some do not. And if your major is your seed, then your institution is the soil. So take the major and you put it in that soil. How well does your institution help that seed grow by the support services that they offer? I.e., I mentioned the guidance counselors, I mentioned the department, letting the students know this is what you need to do. And then the important part, the effort. You water your seed with how much effort you put into it. Because even if you pick the ideal major and you're at the best institution, if you're not actually trying, you're not going to get much yield from your. I get a lot of fruit. So now that you're trying to choose, now that you have an idea of what your ikigai must be, you must take other things into consideration. And this is the part I was telling you, you need to be forward thinking, because choosing a college isn't just, oh, it's just the next 4 years. It doesn't make that much of a difference. It does make a difference, because this is really going to guide your trajectory of the rest of your life. Not to put too much pressure on you. Um, but thinking about to the plant analogy, the one way you can consider the number of things in choosing a major is how much fruit do you want in your basket? We talked about those that produce a lot of fruit, those that produce a little bit of fruit. So one of the first thing is where do you want to be when you are an adult? What class basically? There's five different categories listed here, low income to upper class. And I won't read through all of them, but just at a high level, people are at the low income, they generally struggle to meet basic needs like housing and food and healthcare. And those people usually make um, around less than $50,000 a year and usually around 32,000. Um, Lower middle class covers your basic expenses, but you face financial insecurity and limited savings. These people usually make around 50 to 75K, around 62K, and this constitutes 20,000. So these people usually are okay with day-to-day stuff, but if something were to go wrong, then there could be an issue. If your car breaks down, then you have to use your whole paycheck to pay for your car, but now you can't pay for your rent. Um, Middle class, they enjoy more stability. You can save, own a home, afford some extras. These people usually make between 75 and 150K, around 100. Uh, Upper middle class, these are usually highly educated professionals with strong income, investment, live a pretty comfortable lifestyle, usually make around 180K, range between 150 to 250K. This is around 7 to 8% of the population. And then the upper class, people talk about that top 5, 2, 3, 1%. These are wealthy individuals with major assets, influence. Um, they usually make around 300K, and the range is anywhere above 200. So taking all that into consideration, again, I wanted this to try and be interactive. How much fruit do you want in your basket? So I'll give you all a minute to just think about, there's no issue with picking whatever you want. Some people are minimalists and they don't need much. I have lots of friends and family in that category, while some people may want the stars. So if you can all just throw in the chat, how much fruit do you want in your basket? If you're here for your kid, maybe put in what you think they may want in their basket. And I'll just answer some of the questions while you guys are putting them in. I'll post the video for this within a week or two after the meeting. So especially if you use that link I sent earlier, follow us on our social media. We'll post where we post it, and that's how you can stay informed to get information about this and share with your friends later. What year in high school did we start applying for scholarships early? Every opportunity is a little bit different, but most people will usually apply during their junior and senior year. You get universal AC for minus. I'm not sure what the AC stands for, so be sure to Susan to clarify what that may be. So it looks like most of the people here have chosen anywhere between 3 to 5. Perfectly fine. So the next question I want to ask you is, it's one thing to know, we had what the median incomes were for these different classes, but your money will go a different distance depending on what state you want to live in. But not even taking that into account, what state do you think you want to live in after college? Feel free to throw that in the chat. I'm not sure what A/C account is.
She just responded, that is account. Susan says it's account. So the question is, when you get a university account for minors, does it hurt they're getting financial aid? plus
That's a
scholarship in the
universal,
future.
what kind of account?
So she's saying if you get a universal account for minors, does that hurt their ability to get a financial aid or scholarship in the future?
Okay, I'll be sure to answer that question a little bit later. Okay. Okay, so we see state with the low tax rate. Okay, that's fine. Well, here's some things to take into account. So, how much fruit will your how much will your fruit get you in your neighborhood? So over here, I have the relative value of what $100 will get you in each state. So the darker states will get you further. So your Mississippi, Alabamas, your $100 may get you as far as around $115 in these states, while $100 may not go as far if you live in California, you may be worth more, um, $85. So that just basically means there's a higher general cost of living. And Maryland is right there in the 100 range, so that's a good place to be. And here is the median income uh by state over here. So median is what most of the people in the that area make. Let's give you a moment to soak that in. So next question is, how much fruit do you need to be satisfied in each state? Because maybe that apple, if you're in Mississippi, won't fill your stomach as much as compared to if you live in California. So this over here is um, how much people in the middle class make in each state. So you can see over there. So middle class is generally defined as, I think, twice the median income of that area. So you can see on the high end, to be middle class in California, you need around 111K versus on the other end, Mississippi, you can live a nice middle class lifestyle with just around 40 to 50K. These are some of the things to think about. Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, how much soil do you need for your fruit? So it's one thing to want it, but how much are you going to have to work for it? This has to do with kind of how much water. Um, so this is on the median household wealth and what the usual educational attainment is. Well, if you have these different educational attainment, what is the median income? So if you don't have a high school diploma, usually you'll be in the lower class. As you can see, with a high school diploma, maybe you didn't complete college, usually somewhere around 100K. If you have an associate's degree, maybe around 150. If you have a bachelor's degree, you can usually get you to around 250-ish. And then to really get to the top, the number five, usually we'll need a graduate professional degree. And remember, these are just kind of averages. There are, of course, outliers in all categories. Some people without high school diplomas are CEOs of some startup. And there's some people who have very high degrees, but they may not be able to find a job with it, depending on what the degree is, how the job market is like. So now that you've taken all that into account, let me ask the question. Let me ask the question. What degree do you need for your lifestyle in the state that you want to live in? So, do you think you may need, now that you know all that, do you think you're okay with not having a high school diploma? You think you want to shoot for associates? You want to shoot for a bachelor's to graduate degree? Everybody wants a graduate professional degree, always with the highest. Okay, all right. Well, you came to the right place. So now we're gonna show you. Let me first just do a quick with some of the key takeaways. So, taking a look at the seeds, the median U.S. out the median U.S. household income is around 75K. And to looking at what all the different classes look like, to live comfortably, most people will shoot for middle class, and I think everybody in this call, the lowest was middle class. So I don't think a whole lot of people here is like, yeah, I'm okay with financial insecurity and potentially struggling. As I mentioned before, middle class technically means your household is making about two-thirds to double the national median. So your cost of living affects how far your money goes. So, you know, having $80,000 feels very different if you're from New York than if you're in a small town in Iowa. Um, so 80K in New York, you're like, ah, man, you may be struggling a little bit. While in Iowa, you may be, you know, living the good life. So other things you should take into consideration are, what are your plans for marriage? Depends. Are you going to be a dual income household or a single income household? Because, if you want to be upper middle class, you and your partner can potentially get that together. So then, you'll have to think about what your partner's major career is going to be, depending on what your goals are, because one of you may have to compensate for it if you want to achieve that. And then generational wealth is also something, you know, that'll affect your major because if you already have lots of money in the bank, you may not need as tough a career to live that lifestyle. But that's something for you and your parents to to talk about how much they're actually going to give you when you grow up. Um, so there are many types of seed. If you just look at all the individual specialization, there's over 1,000. So, this is really getting down to the nitty gritty. Like aside from just engineering, there's mechanical engineering, civil engineering, biomedical engineering. But high level, there's around 30 to 40 majors. And there are about 300 to 400 recognized college majors in the United States. And each college has usually a different listing of majors. And actually, over the last couple of years, because of issues with tuition going up and student debt, some colleges have actually removed certain majors that are not really high yield or high income. Um, or maybe they remove the ones that are very low income. Sometimes I hear people make the joke of, yeah, your majoring is in left-handed underwater basket weaving, basket weaving. May not get you far. But also say that there's a lot of options out there, so there's a lot to choose from. I won't go through all of them, but here's a long list of some of the options available: accounting, advertising, letters, chemistry, education, economics, foreign language. Just let you read them all. The list keeps on going. List keeps on going. Music, philosophy, physics, sociology, veterinary, all those different things. So, my next question to you guys, for those who may know what you want to do, what major would you say you're most interested in? If it's undecided, you can put undecided as well. Uh, and one thing I'll even mention as well as because I've seen this be confusing for some people. There's careers and then there's majors. So pre-med, pre-law is actually generally not a major. Usually a major is something that you can get a degree in. So pre-med, pre-law are generally careers, they're tracks. So if you go to a school and you look at the list of majors and you don't see medicine, it's because that's more categorized as a track. um, I went to Notre Dame, and I would, for simplicity, I would tell people I was a pre-med major, but I was actually science pre-professional, and I got a science bachelor's degree. I didn't get a degree in pre-med. So be sure to consider that as you're trying to pick a college and major. Don't say, "Oh, this college doesn't even have pre-med as a major." It's because it's a career track. Okay, we have some STEM people here: medicine, tech, mechanical engineering. Undecided, but my child wants to be on the pre-med track. Okay, so now that you have an idea of how much fruit you want, now we're going to take a look at the seed. So I mentioned different categories of seed. Some that give you uh, more fruit up front versus some that don't. So now I'm going to show you some tables I actually made. So it was actually kind of fun making these data charts. So these are the top 15 slowest growing careers. So that means this gives you an idea of what's the likelihood of this career being robust and there being jobs available. Because if there's a higher demand for jobs, there's more likely to be more money involved. So I color coded this. I put the ones in blue, those are trade schools. Um, and the ones in white are just the other categories. So what I did over here is I put the growth rate anticipated between these years. And then I put the median income. So median is not the average, it's what most of the people make. That's what the median is. That you can the median income after graduate, 5 years after graduation. And to get an idea of the longevity, how much money can you expect 15 years after graduation and 25 years after graduation? And then the other things that's also important to consider is how much debt do these careers usually land you in going to the school? And then what's the debt to income ratio? How much debt are you going to have versus how much income are you going to have? And what does that look like in 5 years versus 15 years? So I'll just highlight some of the things I highlighted. Telemarketer, uh, negative 10% growth rate. They're having machines do that more nowadays. And you can see in this group, the median income is 35K. So even after you've graduated, maybe say you graduated when you're 21, but even by the time you're in your mid 40s, you won't have made much progress from 30 to 40K if you choose this career. Um, and the other thing to consider here is the debt to income ratio. So, postal service worker, you're not going to make much money, but you won't be in much debt. Those are some of the things to think about. So, on the opposite end of this, oh, actually, that means you will have a lot of debt. Um, Opposite end of the spectrum, what are the fastest growing careers? So again, in the blue, we have um, the trade schools, the trade school careers, and then in the orange, we have STEM. So as you can see, the fastest growing careers are either in trade schools or are in STEM. So just look at some of the things that will give you the most money mid part of your life. So this is like your mid 30s or so, the median income, data scientist, information security analyst, software developer. This may come as a surprise to some. I know some people were thinking, oh, well, where's medicine? And those are coming up a little bit later. But as I said, one thing Um, Medicine is an interesting category because, um, and it's coming up in a different slide, just because there's not always the initial money up front, because you have to go to graduate school, but we have that broken down later on. Um, Other things to consider is the debt to income ratio. Nurse practitioners make a great amount of money, but there's a fair amount of debt up front. But as you can see, a couple of years it starts to go down. Same thing with physician assistants. So um, some of the things to think about is STEM is a great option, um, but because it requires you to generally need higher levels of education, you don't necessarily make a lot of money up front, but you do make it. So it's one of those delayed gratification kinds of things. IT is scattered throughout. So like some people may consider IT to be information security analyst, software developer, those kinds of things. And some of the higher grossing trades are wind turbine technician. You know, this part may have been before the big beautiful bill. Uh, Occupation therapist, veterinary school. Um, so looking more specifically at the money, what are some of the lowest paying majors? So here we have some of the lower ones are culinary arts, photography, cosmetology. So, maybe if you are a work in a school cafeteria, you may not be making that much, or if you do makeup, um, some people just have it as a side gig, but for some people that's their whole career. They may not be making as much. Some of the things that are interesting to see here, performing arts, music, theater arts, and some people like, but those don't celebrities fall into that category? Why they make so little? So the thing to remember about that is these are median incomes. What do most people with these majors make? So with that being said, the people who go to college, get a theater major, get a music major, hoping to make it big, you know, there's a relatively small percentage of people that for those majors and then actually make it big enough to be making the millions of dollars. So the stats kind of show that. So that's something to consider if you want to be a musician, um, or go into the arts. What are the chances of you getting that big break? I think a study showed that even that there was this interesting social experiment where they took somebody who was already a famous musician and they put him in a New York subway. you know, he was playing some of his best stuff that he normally does and sold out concerts, but nobody paid him any attention. So sometimes you could be very talented, but without the right opportunity, um, it may not yield any money because he wasn't making much money in the subway station. And then here we have the debt to income ratios. Theology is one of them. I mean, priests have to take a vow of poverty, so it's not it's not too surprising there. Social work um, has limited returns as well. So I'm sure what a lot of you have been looking for. What are some of the highest paying majors? So the previous one was just growth. So this is the actual income. So this may be a little bit more of what you expected. So looking at the median income, the careers that give you the most amount of money include those if you're a physician, you're in dentistry, nurse, nurse anesthetist, which is different from a regular nurse. You have to get different training from a from being a nurse practitioner or a regular nurse. This is specifically for anesthesia, and anesthesia is what we in the medical biz call uh, on the road to riches. And road is an acronym for certain specialties that are generally high income but low stress. And those include radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesia, and dermatology. So nurse anesthetists are known to make a lot of money. And some of the trade ones, radiation therapy, elevator installer. And the part of the reason why some of these may seem strange, but they're on these lists, is because they're also not growing that much. So, for example, if somebody wants to be a mechanic, there's less people who are actually trying to be a mechanic nowadays. Most of the mechanics, if you go, they're in their 50s and 60s, because everybody kind of wants to be a YouTube blogger or this and that. It's not as cool to say that you can't. It's harder to flex on social media that you're a mechanic compared to something else. So because there's less people going to some of these careers, there's more demand for it. People will always be driving cars, as far as we know. I'm sure they said that about the horses. People will always be driving cars, and cars will always be breaking down. So we'll always need somebody to fix them. So the less people going into becoming a mechanic, those mechanics can earn as much as they want. There's not a lot of places you can go otherwise. So some of the things I'll point out, I won't go through all of these, is, again, the physician, 5 years after graduating from college, you have to do 4 to 5 years of medical school, and then you start residency. And usually residency, you're still making around 60K. But once you're in attending, most physicians will be making in that range. And similarly to some of these places, you have to pay for undergrad, you have to pay for medical school. So your debt to income ratio is going to be pretty high for all the debt that you racked up with your education. But you can see from here, and then just 10 years later, it really starts to balance out. And we'll see what happens with loan repayment. I was actually lucky enough to get all my loans paid off. So I'm like debt free. So it's a great place to be right now. So definitely look into those scholarships. I had the Gates Millennium Scholarship, so I didn't have any undergrad debt. So definitely look at those scholarships. And then just focusing, because I know we had a lot of doctors on the call. So looking specifically at career paths, um, here are some of the most common healthcare related career paths. You can just kind of look at them from this, and I'll just point out some of the highest yielding ones are nurse practitioner, uh, doctor, dentist, and then we have over here, we already discussed the debt to income ratio, but this is that bang for the buck I was talking about. Going from 300 to 86 in 10 years versus other ones where there may not be as much growth or as much increase in the income. And then this is also the median as well. So depending on what specialty you choose, this could be anywhere between 200K to people who are making almost close to $1 million in the latter part of their career. And here's one looking at the highest paying uh, careers. So again, STEM, as you can see, is really taking the lead. There are a couple of trade schools, trades as well. So plumber, electrician, for the reasons I discussed, people will always need water and plumbing. So that's there. One of the benefits of it is low debt to income ratio, but how much you can make over your lifetime is going to be relatively limited. As you can see, 25 years into their career, they're not making much more than than 10 years prior, while these ones are almost doubling. So maybe that's about IT before, just computer science as well. Some of the key takeaways from all of that is uh, STEM is a good career path to go. The things to realize is that your earning is really delayed gratification. So the earnings will kick in after more years of training, and you'll have a little bit more debt, but you have one of the best. You have a really good return on investment over time. One of the best ROIs, if you just want to get a bachelor, is nursing. So that's a good route to take. Being Nigerian, a lot of my family's in nursing. My mom's in nursing. My wife, my sister-in-law, like three sisters-in-laws that are in nursing, and my mother-in-laws, and as a nurse practitioner. So lots lots of that. They're all doing well. And then engineering, computer science, data center also have some highest earnings, especially uh, if you want to see the highest return soon after graduation. Some of the computer sciences ones are really good. Humanities, they're really more passion-driven fields. They're likely to be on that other end of that Ikagi kind of thing. So it's likely to make you feel happy when you're learning about it, but they generally will offer lower income and return on investment. And of course, that also depends on your own level of talent, personal success, networking, location, and a lot of luck. Looking at the trades, you can earn more relatively early without much student debt, which is great, but you have to make sure you pick the right trade because some of them can have very low starting pays and stagnant growth. And then also remember, if you go into this, you spend a number of years learning this trade and you do it, it's good to know that that's something that you want because if you don't have a bachelor's degree, if you train to be an electrician and now you don't want to be an electrician anymore and you're 30 years old, you don't have as much options compared to if you are a 30-year-old electrician with a trade certificate versus if you're a 30-year-old person with a bachelor's degree. But overall, you can overcome a lot of these things in one direction or another, depending on your drive, entrepreneurship, and networking. You can overcome these averages, both in a good way and also in a bad way if you don't have enough of it. So that has to go back to the water that you are uh, planting your seeds with. So some of the other big considerations, not other, but high level the consideration that you should think about when choosing what do you want to be when you grow up. Think about Akagi, what are you good at? What do you love to do versus what do you need and what can you get paid for? So once you think about that, other things to consider, how much money do you want to make? What school can nurture your Ikagi, the institution, um, based on how much fruit that you will need? And water that no matter what you do. My email signature uh, since medical school has been work hard at everything you do as if it was the most important thing to do. So make sure you do that. Add as much water to it, regardless of what seed and soil you have to maximize your chances for success. Um, so now that we've come now to the end. Now that you've gotten all that thing and all those considerations, um, throw into your chat. What major are you most interested in now? Now that you've been informed, and I'll start answering some questions. I know somebody had asked about the UGMA, the UTMA. So that counts on the student side, actually. So, there's pros and cons to 529 versus UGMA. 529 you can only use for educational types of things. And if your kid gets a scholarship, doesn't have to pay for their education, then I forget the exact, I think it's somewhere around 55,000 you can actually roll over to an IRA. So that's the pro of the 529 plan. But the con is it has to be used for education. But the UGMA is a similar kind of plan that you have for your minors, and you um, put investment money there, and then they can use it for anything. I kind of like the 529 plan because I'm gonna be like, I want my kids to make sure you go to college versus oh, I'm just gonna use this to live and then or whatever. But UGMA is great for its flexibility. However, that counts as part of the student income, so it's gonna count heavier. So it's more likely to bring down the amount of financial aid that they'll get. How much is in there? Triple major, comment on the mantra, college is a scam. Well, Well, now I guess we're up to the question and answer part. So I'll make sure I'll take it from there. Ah. So if you have any questions, also feel free to unmute yourself and ask it if it hasn't been answered or if it came up already. I think I answered most.
Um, Dr. Debola, um, are there cases where students' income are reported, just the student's income is reported on FAFSA and not that of the parents?
Um, if they're a liberated student, if you are, I forget the exact word right now. If you're a minor that you support yourself, that would be the case.
So when applying for FAFSA, I've not seen any place where that is indicated. You know what I mean? But it's interesting. Someone told me a few years ago that I believe their child was able to apply to FAFSA. They didn't have to report their income. The parent didn't have to report their income. So I don't know if that is obtainable.
Well, sometimes there are changes in the system, so you just have to double check that one. And then the other thing is a lot of what's in FAFSA is the honor code, and it's not checked. So they're just going to take your word for it. Um, it's kind of like doing your taxes. Not that I'm uh, condoning this or anything, but if for certain parts you can say, "Oh, I donated this amount of money to charity," and you get the benefit from it. Um, so nobody's gonna check if you put that in your taxes, but there is a chance that they may do a random check and pick you, or if something's is a little bit of a red flag, they may go and check that. So in regards to your specific thing that you are mentioning, you know, somebody could go and say, my parents don't give me any income. Um, and that'll just be the honor code, especially if that's the person's actual situation, and then that's what it is. And if they submit that, then that's what the situation is. But if they submitted that and that is not true, nobody may check, but there also is an uh, possibility that somebody could check.
Okay, thank you. Auntie Beatrice, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much for organizers of this presentation. See, the saying is that our people perish for lack of knowledge. Most of us who've gone to school, but I don't think we know too much about these things. And then we keep paying out of pocket for our kids. And then when we apply for this FAFSA, it's so hard to qualify and you get frustrated, you just go ahead and pay out of pocket. And I thank you for this presentation. The one question that I have is if a student applies for this FAFSA this year, the next school year, can that child reapply if they did not qualify the first time? That's my question. Thank you.
The answer is yes, and they should. So in regards to reapplying, you have to reapply every year. If you maybe somebody applied their first year, and I'll give you two scenarios. Somebody applied their first year, they got a package and some scholarship. They need to apply the next year if they want to continue getting that package, because people's situations change every year. If somebody applies their first year and they don't get anything, they don't have to apply the following year, but especially if their financial situation changed, either in their parents or in them, it would be a good idea to reapply. Um, they may get something. And some of the things to take into consideration is what are the forms that they look at? They're going to look at the tax forms from the previous 2 years. Similarly, I mentioned in the beginning, I've had friends and family go through this and they're just like, oh man, I don't think I filled this out right. And then their kids didn't get any financial aid. But you remember, now that I've given you the different tactics and ways that you can be strategic, the next year or especially 2 years after, you start putting things in different categories for your taxes. Maybe one of your parents retired, so their income dropped, or maybe, you take money. Financially, you shouldn't have that much money in your savings account, honestly. Your savings checking account, it's best to put them in other kind of accounts where they can make more money. But, if you're going to apply for FAFSA, you can maybe before you put down how much is in your bank account, maybe you pay off a bunch of your debts. And then that way, that amount is decreased. So there's different strategic things. So I would say, yeah, it's a good idea to reapply the next year, especially if your financial situation has changed. You could get a different outcome.
Thank you.
Um, And then also, if you feel like the result that you got is very different from what you think you should get, you can also um, appeal and have it reevaluated.
Okay, thanks.
I see somebody asked, could you throw more light on what work study means? So, uh, work study, I actually did that when I was in college. So what that means, it's basically having a campus job. So I had some friends, for example, who may work in the local Starbucks or maybe a tutor on campus or work in the cafeteria on campus. And a portion of the money can either go directly to you to pay off your tuition or go into the student's bank account. So they're campus related jobs. I had an off-campus job where I mentored kids in the local community.
iPhone raised his or her hand. The name is not stated. You can unmute yourself and go ahead. I think you already unmuted.
Yes, this is Angela Benedict. Thank you, Dr. Giwa, for this nice, very informative presentation. My question is there any time that is late to start repaying your student loans? If your child is still using your, can I say, your student loan or the FAFSA to go to college?
So in regards to timing, it's all relative. Is there too early? Is there too late? Usually for a lot of these college loans, they have favorable terms. So usually for a lot of them, you don't start accruing interest on the loan until a certain number of years after you finish college. And that's the ideal time to start paying it off. You should probably try to pay a little bit more than the interest to break it down. Is there a time that's too late? I mean,
Yeah.
too late is relative. If you don't pay off your loan, the amount that you owe will increase, and that will compound on itself.
Yeah.
I didn't look into exactly what happens if hypothetically, like, the loan was taken out on a grandparent, and then the grandparent passes away. Who who has to pay off the loan? It honestly depends on the type of loan and the terms that are there. Some are stuck with you and they'll just go to the next generation. Or some, if the person passes away, then that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is very informative. We didn't hear this when we were applying for FAFSA going to college. Thank you. Thank you for this eye opener. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. I got to do a real bit deep dive in preparing for this. So, it's definitely it's helped me make sure that when my kids get to that level, I'm gonna do the right things because Somebody put in side jobs equals side hassle. And there's different ways, especially Nigerians are known for having a whole bunch of side hustles and side hassles. So if you have a small business, there's different strategic things you can do to pay your
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
Um, and while that seems like a great idea, if you
Mhm.
don't put it in the right kinds of baskets,
Mhm.
it, it could affect them negatively in regards to FAFSA. I
Mhm.
mean, I heard a lot of you are physicians, so we we may not get a whole lot of money because we're already high income earners.
Mhm.
So you got to
Mhm.
do the pros and cons. But,
Mhm.
I think after hearing this, if I pay my child through my side hustle or my small business, I'll put that money into their 529 plan. Because if I
Mhm.
pay it and they just have this really big bank account or UGMA, then they'll be less likely to get financial aid.
Mhm.
But if I think that in that time, my wife and I are going to be making so much income that our W-2s are not going to let her get anything regardless, then I'm going to be like, okay, then let me try to put as much in the 529 plan because we're not going to get anything from a federal standpoint anyway. And then I'm going to shoot for apply to loads of scholarships early to get money that way, unless you know and are familiar with the different tax strategies of like decreasing what your um, annualized income is like. So if you have a, but that's a whole nother talk on finance. But
Mhm.
that's one way to think about 529 plan. But
All right, there. Thank you so much, Doc.
you're welcome.
Mhm.
Somebody said college is a scam. So that's a really good point. So what I'll say for that is I think it really goes back to the slide that said, is the juice worth the squeeze? College is a scam if you don't do it strategically. Um, I'll tell you where college is a scam and where college is not a scam. College is a scam if you go to a college that's very expensive, you pick a major that's not high income, and then you decide to, yeah, those are basically when college is a scam. If you and not to knock on any profession, but I'll just use data instead of picking a random one. So we'll go to what are some of the lowest paying majors? Early childhood education. So if you are going to become a nanny and or maybe you're going to do preschool or a nursery, a daycare center, you know, are you going to go to college and have up to $150,000 in debt to get a degree in early childhood education? That's when college may be a scam. I mean, we send our kids to nursery and it's great and we love it. Definitely love the early education people, and it's great to see that people have a degree there. But also, there are lots of nannies there who don't have any education as well. So in that case, you got a degree to pursue a career where you didn't even need that. So in that case, it's a scam. However, if you decide to go into the highest paying majors, college is not a scam. It's an investment, an important investment. A lot of us here are doctors. We paid a lot for college, we paid a lot for medical school. And then, especially if you pick the right, uh, even if you don't pick the right specialty, even the lowest paying physicians have a median income in the 200, which already puts you in like the top 5, 10% of all Americans. And if you have the right kind of opportunities, then your income can go up to, you know, close to $1 million if all you do is become a physician. So in that case, it's definitely not a scam. It's only a scam if you choose the wrong kinds of things. Um, and college, even outside of that, it's a great way. It's an important, it's a great experience. You know, some people say high school is the best 4 years of your life, but I always say the people who say that didn't go to college or didn't go to the right college. Because even of all the different experiences that I showed you guys, you also make lifelong friends. So this is my buddy Conrad. You know, we've been best friends. We were both pre-med majors, and we became best friends within a few weeks of college. And, you know, we were one of those classic stories. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. We both have wives that are nurses. We both have kids, a daughter and a son. So this is my best friend. You know, I just talked to him last weekend. And a lot of college friends are like that. And, you know, is college a scam? It led me to the best opportunities and experiences I have in my life. You know, I live a pretty good lifestyle. I got a nice car. I have a beautiful Igbo wife. You'll be happy to know. We're able to fly internationally, first class is us in Egypt. And here's us still loving college. You know, I've traveled around to different places and lived in different places. I don't really pick up the sports team, but I'm definitely always, I don't even watch sports that much, but I always cheer on the Fighting Irish, which is where I went to for college. So here's us just actually a weekend or two ago. You see, we're all wearing the Notre Dame clothes. So Notre Dame definitely was the best experience of my life. And if I didn't go there, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. Uh, Even outside the education, the experiences and the opportunities that it's opened up. Any more questions? Any ideas on military discounts for college? That's also a personal decision. You know, there's different types of military scholarships and such that will pay back loans, but it's honestly a cost benefit analysis. You know, you don't know with especially the new administration how many of the loan repayments they're going to take away. But the military generally has really good programs that will help pay off debt, but you have to also do the time. So sometimes that could include deployment, um, or having you have to work and where they tell you to work. If you become a doctor, for example, you'll have to maybe, well, you guys are in the DMV, you know that there's a big base over there, so you may have to work there, or they could deploy you into small towns or all over the country. One of the buddies I met in the summer program I went to before college at Notre Dame. We're still best friends now. I talked to him a few weekends ago. He did the military route, and he just came back from Guam after he was forced to live there, required to live there for like around 4 or 5 years. And he didn't really have too much of a say in that. But you know, he doesn't have much debt, so it's all about balancing that. And here I just have on this slide, if you guys are interested in follow me on social media. I post different opportunities. I also do mentoring and things of that nature. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe. And any other questions?
Any other questions, you can unmute and ask your question.
Oh, you have your phone number, please, doctor.
It's right there in the digital business card. So if you scan the QR code or click
Oh,
the
okay.
link, you can follow me on any of my social media platforms. And we
Okay.
also have a business WhatsApp account. You can message,
Okay.
call us from.
Thank you.
Any other person with any question? Okay. In the absence of any question, we want to really, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, Dr. Adebola. This information you gave us today is so invaluable. And we cannot put money to it, but we are very grateful. On behalf of Umar and Bano and our families and our friends and our guests, we say thank you. May God continue to enrich you and in every way possible. and may you continue in this mission to give this knowledge out, especially to the diasporans and the immigrants. Thank you so much.